Welcome. My name is Cassandra Cannon. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I am an EMDRIA approved consultant, and I am an approved sponsor by the APA to offer continuing education credits. And I wanted to talk specifically today about target selection. As you may have heard in a previous YouTube video about the importance of master treatment planning and target selection and sequencing, I wanted to go a little bit deeper in target selection for EMDR. And I'm actually going to pull up my little, I created a target selection clinician handout and a target selection client handout that I'm actually going to kind of walk you through a little bit. So some clients are really on board and they want to write you a whole timeline and they want to give you all of the information of everything that's happened in their past. And for those people, I say, great. If it gets too activating, stop. I don't want you to be suffering in flashbacks or anything if I'm not there, especially if I'm not there to help you. But some of the questions on this selection worksheet are, what symptoms are bothering you the most right now? Because that helps me have an idea of what's bringing them to treatment, and that often is what we need to get after first. What situations seem to be connected to the symptoms? And some clients can tell you like what negative beliefs that they're carrying or embodying that they don't want to feel anymore. Um, Sometimes clients come in and say, I've got a lot of trauma, but this one I need to get after. I need to do this one first. Great, easy. Maybe we do that one first. I would do that one first, unless we come up with a compelling reason to do something else. But in the clinician handout for target selection, I have laid out some of the different ways you can select targets. Now, a lot of you in your initial training will have been given a random handout of like, what are your best memories? What are your worst memories? And I've kind of compiled the different ways that I've observed from all of the more prominent EMDR clinicians out there. So again, when did your symptoms begin? When did the traumas begin? What was happening around the time your symptoms got worse? You also have the classic timeline method where you're looking for the most disturbing memories and the most positive memories. Again, you're looking for things that are driving symptoms, but then also any positive memories that you can use to anchor and help them kind of come back to if you need to. There's also negative beliefs approach, and this is one way that EMDR really can commingle with CBT if you're a big CBT person. One thing I really struggled with CBT was, okay, so now we know your negative belief, but then how do we change that? And that's one reason why I really found EMDR to be helpful is EMDR is this is how we change that. But one way is you ask your client like what negative beliefs feel true, especially in your body. And you can even give them the negative beliefs handout that is often floating around there. And the two other ones that you're going to run into the most are the floatback technique and affect scan. And the floatback technique is someone comes in and they're talking about how they really struggle with their boss. And in my mind, I'm going, it's probably, well, your boss might be terrible, but you're probably even more activated by your boss than someone else might, because your boss reminds you of someone else. And so we might identify that most recent time you experienced the symptom. If you can, you get a negative belief. Some people really struggle with getting that negative belief, and I don't want to spend too long trying to get that. It's important if you can get it, but sometimes it just pulls the client out when you're trying to really narrow down that negative belief. So, but a lot of times they can just tell you right away. And then you have your client hold that image of that most recent event with your boss and the negative belief that they are feeling or noting when they're around their boss, or that what connects to that image with their boss. Notice the sensations in your body and let your mind float back to an earlier time and tell me the first scene that comes to mind where you felt this way before. And then you document all those targets, and they may be used in your sequencing plan. If my client is particularly dissociative, which you should know if you've done an assessment, which is really important because a lot of people don't realize how dissociative they might be. If they're particularly dissociative, I'm not saying float back, I'm saying trace back, a little bit more grounding. And another one is affect scan. And this is for the person where they can't really tell you necessarily an incident, but it's like this feeling that they carry, or a scent that they carry. And so in that case, the big difference is you're not really getting a negative belief, but you identify the most recent time that they experienced that emotion. It might be dread, or like lack of motivation. When's the most recent time that they had that felt sense? Might be also a representative memory, like, well, every time I'm trying to make client phone calls. Okay, so the last time you made a client phone call, and the prompt is holding that experience in your mind. Notice those emotions that you're having right now, and notice what you're feeling in your body. And then let your mind scan back to an earlier time when you may have felt this way before, and just notice what comes to mind. And then you just kind of notate. And if I can get the suds for each memory, because sometimes they're just like bouncing, oh, and then this one, oh, and then this one. But if I can get the suds of how intense that is, that also helps later in your sequencing, which there'll be another video for that. So I hope that this was helpful in you identifying certain targets. Remember that a really common way to go is timeline. That doesn't necessarily help you with sequencing, though. And in timeline, something to know is there's often different negative beliefs for each target. And if you're doing a cluster, you want to try to keep the clusters in your sequencing in the same type of negative belief, whether it's around control or defectiveness and shame or things like that. So you've got the timeline, you have negative beliefs, which I find has a lot of good stuff when you're just, this negative belief that I'm worthless. You can really, I love doing the negative beliefs as a way to target, or target selections. And then you have the affect scan and the Floatback. Those are the big ones for target selection. Again, if you are lucky enough to have someone say, there's just this big thing I need to get off my plate, go there first. Don't forget that it's often really helpful to do like a mini target, a target where it's like upsetting, but not as bad as you're going to be working on, especially at the beginning, so that your client can have the experience of what EMDR is like and helps you see how they process. Because again, everyone is very different. And so it gives you an idea of how they process and helps you feel a little bit more prepared for what's coming your way when you start doing other targets. Anyways, I hope that this was helpful. Thanks.